I have had numerous online discussions with atheists who took issue with my arguments about Christian civilization. They always criticize me for crediting Christianity for its many accomplishments. But one thing they never do, they never argue the superiority of atheist civilizations. It's hard to compare Christian civilization with atheist civilizations, since there has never been an atheist civilization, great or otherwise. I guess the closest you would get would be the Marxist attempts of the past 100 years. There are more than you think, 20 or so in Eastern Europe, another 20 or so in Africa, and several in Asia and Latin America. History is sprinkled with a few short-lived communist governments. None lasted more than 100 years, most less than 50. There are only a handful left. China, sort of. North Korea, Cuba, which is barely hanging on. And maybe Laos, Vietnam. Some might even include Venezuela in that list. Now, it's perfectly fair to judge atheism on this question, because it was Marx himself who said his intention was to build a civilization. Not just a great one, a perfect one, a utopian state. It would not be local either. It would be universal. He said eventually the whole world would be communist and atheist. And some Marxists still believe this radical eschatology even today. He argued that its formation was inevitable. He called it a scientific certainty. But the next Marxist civilization will be the first. Instead of a utopia, you get a dystopian house of horrors, the worst governments in the history of the world. With Christianity, you get the best culture in the history of the world. It's not perfect, but it's the best. Why can't atheists build a civilization? Well, let me give you several reasons. First, they start with the problem that there just aren't very many atheists. According to Ryan Burge, the number of atheists, including agnostics, in the United States is around 10% and has been that way for a long time. Pew Research numbers show that other Western nations are similar, although some European countries have a slightly larger number of atheists than the U.S., but nowhere near a majority. And these atheists all live in countries where the blessings they enjoy were created by Christian civilization. There is no example in history in which a group of atheists went out to a pioneer area and built a culture. Now, the second reason they fail to build civilizations is they have no ability to positively affect human behavior. The British atheist Matthew Paris said, quote, "Now I am a confirmed atheist. I've become convinced of the enormous contribution that Christian evangelism makes in Africa." Paris has spent a large part of his life in Africa. It is sharply distinct from the work of secular NGOs, government projects, and international aid efforts. These alone will not do. Education and training alone will not do. In Africa, Christianity changes people's hearts. It brings a spiritual transformation. The rebirth is real. The change is good. The Christians are always different. Its converts, far from being cowed or confined, their faith appears to have liberated and relaxed them. There is a liveliness, a curiosity, an engagement with the world, a directness in their dealings with others that seem to be missing in traditional African life." End quote. In other words, Jesus Christ transforms your life in a wonderful, glorious way. Atheism doesn't do this. Third, to build a civilization, you have to have some moral glue to enable its citizens to get along with each other. The atheists have no basis for morality. Frank DeVito, writing in First Things, says, quote, "The problems that plague our society are at heart religious problems. If man does not know what he is, why he exists, what he is made for, or what he is doing on this earth, then he has little chance of getting any other questions right. Without putting God and religion at the heart of the discussion, how can man be good? How can he even articulate what it means to be good? End of quote. Atheists do not believe that God created man in his image. Therefore, they do not believe in the sanctity of life. They have no rationale for human rights, equality, social justice, or ministries of compassion. Tom Holland has a fascinating story about Julian the Apostate, the 4th century Roman ruler who wanted to eradicate Christianity and restore paganism as the religion of the empire. But in order to do that, Julian had to replicate Christianity's compassion for the poor, its ministry to the weak. How do you get pagans to do that? Holland says Julian discovered that to replace Christianity, you basically had to replace it with Christianity. Christian social teaching is so powerful, it is virtually impossible to get rid of. People like Nietzsche and the Nazis tried but failed. Even unbelieving American liberals and conservatives admit that Christian compassion is a good thing. Fourth, atheists can't build a civilization because they do not sacrifice for their beliefs. In other words, they have a very low commitment to their ideals. I've gotten into fierce online debates over my observation that when I travel in Asia, I never see any Marxist orphanages. I never see any Charles Darwin memorial hospitals. No Vladimir Lenin or Joseph Stalin schools. Atheists have responded by telling me that they aren't helping Asians because they are so committed to helping people at home. But I don't see any helping institutions at home run by atheists. Other atheists have said they are just as compassionate as Christians, but they don't brag about it. They keep it a secret. Right, really secret. Fifth, atheists can't build a civilization because they are simply more self-serving than Christians, and it takes a certain degree of unselfishness to build a culture. It's interesting to read Ryan Burge's statistics on religion and children. Christians have about twice as many kids as atheists. Having a child in this day and age takes a certain degree of unselfishness and religious commitment. Jonathan Last said that when you see a family with 3 or more children, they are making a theological statement. They are showing their Christian commitment. Atheists simply don't have that level of commitment, and you can't build a civilization without it. The Pilgrims crossed the Atlantic in 1620 primarily for one reason. They wanted the freedom to homeschool their children. They paid a terrible price for their commitment. Half of them died the first winter. But they persevered, and they built the richest, freest, and most powerful civilization in world history. I've given 5 reasons atheists don't build a civilization, and there are probably more. I want to give glory to the God of Scripture and His Son, Jesus Christ, who have raised up millions of believers to build the glorious culture we live in. Praise be to His holy name.